Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode number 308 of the Comic Watchers Show. Chad is coming. He'll be here in just a moment. And I'm Matt, the other guy that runs this shit show. So tonight we are welcoming back author Mark Russell. There's Chad. He is going to talk to us about his new comic from Mad Cave. It's called Dog Tag, and I'm going to let him fill in all the rest. Mark, good evening.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Chad. Glad you can make it.
Sorry, I was running a little bit late. I didn't know you guys had already started.
You came in right.
I got impatient.
You just came in right at the top of the show.
But we didn't really get started.
No. In fact, I think I'm holding up the starting right now.
It's all good.
But yeah, just to talk real quick about Dog Tag. It's a comic set at the end of World War II, and it tells the story of a guy named Tom Fuller. He's like a private, and he's a journalist for Stars and Stripes magazine, and mostly what he writes are sort of human interest, sort of like this is a day in the life on base, sort of funny articles about the things guys do on base while they're not fighting the war. And the U.S. Army sees this as like a perfect way to sort of spread disinformation to the Germans about where the invasion of Europe is going to come. So they want him to like make it sound like there's like tens of thousands of people in Dover at this giant army base that doesn't exist, getting ready for the invasion in Europe. And he's talking about like, oh, we're having ketchup drinking contests. There's tank races, everyone's chomping at the bit to finally get to Europe, and it on the idea that the invasion from Dover. But then, because the invasion is a success, he then has to go fight them. But we no longer need you to war. So he goes over and he finds out that the war he sees is very different than what he imagined, and he knows he can't possibly write about the war he's seeing in a magazine that's meant to boost morale. So instead he has a notebook and he just starts writing everything he sees down in his notebook with the idea that someday I'll be able to tell the truth about the things I've seen and done in this war. And that's what the comic is. The comic is basically his book, his recollections of the different battles, little known chapters of the war, all of which are based on real things that actually happened in World War II. But him unable to tell them in the pages of Stars and Stripes, and instead saving them for the day when he can tell the truth about what the war is really like to the people who fought and died in it.
I find this interesting because both my grandfathers were in World War II. One of them fought in both the Pacific and helped with the liberation of France. Then my other one was in the Navy and crossed the ocean 42 times. So and they really didn't like to talk about their time.
Yeah, and it's kind of understandable. It was like a prolonged traumatic experience. It's like talking about a chain of 30 car accidents you were in. I think that the other thing that's really resonant about that war still is that it is, even though it's almost 80 years old at this point, over 80 years old. It still is like forms the foundation for a lot of families' stories. Like you said, both your grandfathers fought in the war. I had a grandfather who fought in the war and another one who was a mechanic in the war. And my dad was a survivor of the Birmingham Blitz in Birmingham, England. And so, yeah, the lore of World War II, I think, is very much still alive. It's still relevant, even though it happened so long ago, because we all have family members who their lives were changed by it.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it seems like an important, story because, we're losing those people of, that generation.
That's a very good point. Yeah, it's like every year the living record of that war, and the war that warned us against the fascism, the war that warned us that these are some bad ideas we want to stay away from at all costs because they always end in grief and destruction, even for the people who start the wars. And we're losing those living reminders of these lessons. We're losing the people who can tell us firsthand what a bad idea, like fascism is. What a bad idea invading your neighboring countries is. So it's important that we maintain the record of their lives and their struggle and those lessons of history, while we still can.
I think it's interesting about World War II because it's one of those rare, very rare conflicts that's extremely black and white. Like there are very clear-cut good guys, very clear-cut bad guys, and you don't see that in a lot of conflict, right? But it makes it, pardon me, it makes it easier to mythologize World War II, I think, and keep that, like you said, keep that living record alive, even as the people that were serving at that time pass on.
Right. Yeah, and I think it was like it wasn't a morally ambiguous thing about whether or not you should be a Nazi or rooting for the Allies to win. But there was still a lot of moral ambiguity that went on in the day-to-day fighting of the war.
Sure.
People being forced to make choices and do things that they had not been morally or emotionally prepared to do, and now being forced to do it to serve this greater cause. And I think a lot of that is what sort of that's like sort of the unsung cost of the war, is what it did to the lives of the people who were called upon to then kill other people just like them, to stop fascism, and also just what it does to a person to have an experience like that, where they are expected to throw out everything they thought they knew about right and wrong for a year, and then go back to being the person they were before, which is almost impossible.
Sure.
So, what? Obviously, wanting to tell the story inspired it, but did also the current political climate have something to do with why you wanted to tell the story now?
Absolutely, and I think that I sort of touched upon it, is that we're starting collectively, not just the United States, but across the world, to forget what a terrible idea this was. Imperialism and wars of conquest and turning the government over to the fascist, ultranationalist one party rule. That this is a disaster, not only for the people who they attacked, but for the countries themselves that went this way. This is an idea that's never had a happy ending, and yet it's been so long that people have forgotten that, and people are willing to try this demonstrably terrible idea again. And so, I think it behooves us to remind ourselves why this was such a scorched earth idea for so long, and also, just to part of what I wanted to talk about this book about how it's never too late to turn your back on that. There's lots of characters who were, fighting on behalf of the Germans, fighting, for fascism, who then realized at the end of the war that if the Nazis get their way, they're not going to stop until we're all dead. And you got like regiments of the German army, particularly in places like Austria, or the towns that are liberated by Allies as they're coming through Germany, that just want this war to be over, and they realize the thing that's going to prevent that from happening are the fanatical Nazis, the SS, the people who are, with Hitler until the last stand, and they realize ultimately that their choice is between turning their back on fascism and cooperating with the Americans and ending this war, or suicide. And I feel like that's the choice that fascism and ultranationalism ultimately leaves its adherents when they realize that they've been had, when they realize they've been lied to. It's like, well, do I just double down on this because this is what I've chosen? Or do I save what's left of my life and the lives of those around me by finally admitting that I was wrong?
I know that a lot, pretty much all your work has undertones of this, but was it any different writing about real events rather than, let's say, killer robots or social
Yeah.
media. With
It's always different because you have the luxury of research. You are writing about actual lives and actual things that happened. One of the and I think in a lot of ways it feels more credible than fiction. It feels like a little more earned, like the emotional effects that you get from writing something based on reality than you do from fiction. But also, it's a little easier because you aren't having to make up something that's compelling. You aren't having to come up with great metaphors. You're able to just tell the story as it actually happened. But one of the stories I use in this book was actually taken from the real life experience of Jack Kirby when he was in the war. Yeah, he told of this when he was in the Battle of the Bulge. He had to like drive a buddy back to headquarters, back to base. Throughout this battle's raging. And there's bombs bursting in the trees everywhere, and gunshots going off. And you hear screams, and he's having to like get his buddy back to HQ to get him, operated on. And then when he gets there, it's like almost like the war isn't happening when he's at HQ. They're like, they're telling, your friend's going to be operated on. While you're here, Marlene Dietrich is going to be performing on the USO stage. And because there's so many guys fighting the war, there's not enough people to listen, and we don't want her to be embarrassed. So would you please, while you're here, go watch the USO show, which
wow.
he does. And, and not to disparage Marlene Dietrich, the war cost her a lot too, and she did what she could to help us win it. But it's almost just kind of like this moment of absurdity where he finally, comes out of the blood and muck of this war and then gets like this showbiz moment where he's, sitting there covered in blood watching a stage show, and then as soon as it's over, he has to go back to the war.
That's an incredible story.
It's just one of these like things that's too strange to be false. It's
right. Yeah, too strange to be false. What other kinds of research did you put in for this story?
Well, one of the weirder sort of chapters of the war I came across, which makes its way into the book, is the battle of a place called Castle Itter in Austria, and it comes in the waning days of the war, like after Hitler had committed suicide, but while the fanatical Nazis are still fighting in pockets. And some of the SS got the idea that if we can go to this prison in Austria called Castle Itter and murder all the high value French prisoners there, they had former prime ministers, they had the former minister of war there, they had Charles de Gaulle's sister and former tennis champion there. If we can go there and kill all these high-value prisoners, then it'll be impossible for Germany to make peace with the Allies, they thought. So they're on their way to take over this prison. The idea they're going to kill all the prisoners. And the American unit that's sent to go liberate this prison realizes that there's hundreds of SS soldiers on the way, and there's only 13 of them. And they're going to get overwhelmed. So they kind of have to do the unthinkable, and they have to turn to the German soldiers who were, until now, the guards of the prison, the people who were sent to defend the prison, and ask them to join them in the defense of the castle against their own countrymen, against the SS as they're coming up. So this sort of motley force of like French prisoners, German, soldiers who are guarding, who are the prison guards, and these American soldiers fight off this contingent of hundreds of SS until the regular U.S. Army can get there and relieve them. But it's the only known case in World War II where American and German soldiers fought side by side.
Huh.
Interesting.
Was there anything else along those lines that you found yourself like very surprised to have read?
Yeah, I mean, there have been over the years leading up to the writing of this book, just sort of like weird details or chapters where I thought this is like just a good microcosm of how weird this war was, and about like how hard it would have been for like a 19, 20-year-old having never left home, suddenly finding yourself having to walk through, being excited to see France and Paris and everything, And then when you get there, you're walking through a city that's just been bombed out, destroyed. It's a husk of what it was. You don't know if there's snipers or someone you're going to get stabbed when you go around it, being so completely contrary to your imagination of what not only what France was going to be like when you got there, but also what the war was going to be like. Where you imagine you're going to be sitting in a battlefield, shooting across like trench lines at each other. The actual war was nothing like that. In fact, a lot of times in the Battle of the Bulge, the war was fought, inside foxholes. And you'd get out of your foxhole to go back to take a buddy back to the doctor. And you come back and there'd be a German soldier in your foxhole. So it was just, the chaos of the war and how the war, and this is kind of a theme of it, like the war is, this war is nothing like what you would expect to be because everyone builds their expectations on the last war. And this is something you have to know when you go to war, that you can't go to war confident you know what it's going to be like, because all your expectations are based upon a previous war, and probably a previous war your side won. So that may not, past performance does not indicate future results.
So the book is published by Mad Cave, and we know that Mark London and company are very open to anything. How was it, pitching this to them, and was there any, how did they receive the pitch? I guess obviously they liked it.
They were very receptive to it, which was frankly kind of surprising to me because like I said, it's a war comic, and it's hard to sell a work, not just a war comic, but a war that happened over 80 years ago, which I think, one, is kind of what makes it so important to write a war comic set in World War II now, but also makes it really hard to sell somebody on it. It's like, really? One, it feels kind of overplayed. It's like, hasn't there already been, hasn't everything about World War II already been said? And also, it's like, is this what the kids want? If you're like a 19-year-old going to a comic book shop, are you looking for war comics? Probably not. But at the same time, I feel like that's kind of what makes it worth writing, is the fact that this isn't being done right now. These are stories that aren't really being told right now. And also because I think that these are, insightful lessons we once had no question about these worth learning, and we're forgetting them because it's been so long.
Do any historical figures that, do they appear in this book, or is this just a story from soldiers?
It's a story primarily about regular people that are fictionalized, but soldiers, on the ground. Although, yeah, you do get these cameos by Adolf Hitler, Marlene Dietrich, and one of the captives in Castle Itter is they call him the Bounding Basque. He's an old French tennis champion, and I use the actual historic guy in the comic because he played an incredibly important role in it. They realized that they weren't going to be able to hold out against these SS soldiers that had placed the prison under siege, but he was known as being this extremely athletic tennis player. So the Bounding Basque volunteers to run past German lines down the mountain to let the American army know that they're up there needing support. And sure enough, he almost like jumping over a tennis net. At the end of a match, he goes running through it, and jumps over the barrier that the SS had erected to the protective defensive barrier the SS had erected to protect themselves when they fired on the fortress. And they're so shocked by this. They're so gobsmacked by the fact that somebody would just run down the hill and jump over the barrier and keep going, that it never even occurred to anybody to shoot at them. But the whole battle, the fact that all these high value prisoners were saved, and that the Americans were able to sort of stop the SS from murdering everybody inside this castle, was due to the fact that this one guy made this really noble, heroic, some would say suicidal, choice to go down the mountain and let them know that they were up there, and he's an actual guy. So it's one of the people I felt it would have been worse to fictionalize that and keep him out. And also Colonel Jodl of the German army, who was led a regiment in Austria, used the actual Colonel Jodl because he made the very real choice to turn traitor, to betray the the Wehrmacht and fight alongside the Americans. And he was branded as a traitor, at least for the few days. But today he's like a hero in Austria of the resistance, and he was like one of the very few casualties in that battle. He gave his life to make up for the mistake of fighting on behalf of the Third Reich.
So let's talk a little bit about the rest of the creative team. PJ O'Rourke is the artist. I can't remember the colorist. Jordan, and then
PJ Holden on art, and then PJ Jordan on the colors.
And a friend of mine who lives local, the letterer, Buddy, and I always screw up his last name, Bedoin.
Who? What?
Yeah, I said it's Buddy, and I can't. I guess, I said.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm terrible. I forgot Buddy's last name, but yeah,
it's like Bedoin or something. I forget how he pronounces it. That's why I always screw it up every time I see him.
Yeah, and John Moisan is editing it, and yeah, it's been a really good team. That's the thing. It's like when I get the pages back from those guys, it's like, it really makes me want to do shows like this, because I really want to tell people that, to get over your the idea that it's a war comic, and just check this out. It's just the art itself is just worth the price of admission.
How did PJ get attached to the project?
Well, I didn't know PJ, but Mike Martz, who is the original editor on the project, did. So he put us together, and I saw some of his art, and I thought it was fantastic. And he'd worked on Judge Dredd and stuff, so I was familiar with some of the things he'd drawn. And yeah, he just started sending me some like pages, some covers and stuff. And I thought, yeah, he instantly gets what. And the thing that I really loved about him as an artist is that he's more, I think, fanatical and painstaking about getting the era of the uniforms and the ranks and those sorts of details correct than I am. I would send him, reference photos of this is what a U.S. Army captain's uniform looked like in 1944, and he'd be like, oh yeah, but then he would go and research all the other uniforms, or he would have he'd make sure he got the right, the aircrafts right and stuff. It was just the attention to detail, I think, was so important for a project like this, and he just really dove into that.
And I could be wrong, and that's never happened. So but I believe he's also done some war-related comic books, because I believe he's worked with the Army, because they do spotlighting certain heroes, and I believe he did one with Henry Johnson, who's from the Albany area. So,
well, that would make total sense, because yeah, it seemed very natural to him.
He also did String Bags with Garth Ennis.
Oh, that's probably how he got the job.
Yeah,
that's probably it.
Yeah, he's definitely got some World War II comics experience.
Yeah, it shows. I mean, because yeah, he's very meticulous about getting things right, very knowledgeable about who would be wearing what and what places look like, and what hair and fashions were like back then for civilians.
So, did Jordan the colorist come with, or did? Was it just
later? And I think Mike again put him with us. But he does a great job of capturing the hues of green and brown that come with the war without making it feel muddy, or without making it feel just sort of monochromatic. He does a great way of sort of varying the colors so it looks different in the morning or against the fog. And and a lot of the story takes place in winter and stuff, so it's not like a drab mud brown story. There's a lot of color going on here, and a lot of seasonal changes, and he really, I think, made an effort to not turn it into something that just looks sort of like a drab, muddy, depressing battlefield. The story is set on a mud, drabby.
It wouldn't be hard to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm always glad to see Buddy and there's the letterer, because he's a writer himself, but he also has been doing work on Green Arrow and or did work on Green Arrow before. It was, I think he's also on maybe The Flash now. So he's definitely and rightfully come into his own.
Yeah, sounds like it. I didn't know that, but yeah, good for him.
So, Mark, what other projects do you have on the boil right now? Like Dog Tag is coming out just next month, right?
Yeah, Dog Tag, like the FOC, the final order cutoff is April 13th. So please tell your local comic shop that you want them to hold it for you. Put it in your pull box now. And then, yeah, the first issue drops on May 6th. And yeah, I got some other things coming down the pike. Some things with Mad Cave, some other things. We just released the full collection of Vanishing Point Mad Cave, which is a collection of my science fiction shorts. It's sort of like if they let me write the Twilight Zone, for better or for worse. This is what that would look like.
Right on.
Existentialist Twilight Zone, but the entire collection, all 6 issues, are out. And in convenient trade paperback form. So there's that. And also, I'm doing some projects that haven't been announced with like DC. I am doing, I recently did World's Finest number 49 with Mark Waid, like co-wrote it.
Oh, you're pulling all the weight in that one.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's like I had to show him what a real writer is like. But I'm also writing. I'm really excited for this. A 30-page sort of Father's Day special story for World's Finest about Jonathan Kent and Alfred, going out to a steakhouse dinner for Father's Day with Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, and it was just pure joy to be able to write that. So I can't wait for that to come out. That comes out in June.
Oh, I can't wait to read that.
And last week you were part of the ensemble in the Mad About DC. Come on.
Yeah. No, I had a Snappy Answers to Stupid Questions with Steve Lieber on art for that, which, for somebody who grew up on Mad Magazine, I read more Mad Magazine than I did DC or Marvel. So that was like a real, it's like that was one of those, you get these moments in this industry where you feel like you've made it. And that was one of them. Also, I would be remiss not to mention the fact that I have a Kickstarter with Ahoy for a 64-page comic called The Forgotten Divine, which is about these people who start having visions of an alien world, and they form together with other people who are having these visions. They're trying to figure out what they mean, these sort of dreams of this alien planet, but they're all having the same ones, and so they sort of form a cult called the Forgotten Divine. But again, it's something I'm really proud of, and it's got amazing art by Russ Braun. And so if you go to Kickstarter and you look up the Forgotten Divine, please click on the link to get notifications for when it goes live.
Another local guy. Come on.
Yeah. I know. I've worked with them all.
Well, it's not like you're lacking for work, so that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, not at the moment. Thank God. We'll see how it goes.
How do you keep your work plate balanced? Like, you've got so many irons in the fire, and yet everything comes out on time, everything comes out and it reads well, and you continue, your star just continues to rise. How do you do it?
Well, I feel like the important thing is to just really enjoy it, because if you don't, then it becomes impossible. It becomes impossible to hit the treadmill every day. You feel like you're pushing the rock up the mountain, and it's just going to roll back down. But if you enjoy, if you're like how Albert Camus imagined Sisyphus enjoying pushing the rock up the mountain, it's not a bad thing at all. And it's a lot easier to get up in the morning and do it, and take pleasure. And it's just like I can't imagine myself doing anything else. It's the best job I've ever had. It's the best sort of existence I think I can imagine, where I'm getting, the moment I get up, I'm thinking about stories or thinking about what it is I want to say, and metaphors. So that helps. I mean, yeah, the balance between doing that and not doing that is sometimes hard to strike, because it's so time consuming, and not just time consuming, but sort of soul consuming, that there's not a lot of time for other stuff. But I also teach film classes sometimes. Like I just taught one on Tuesday night about the film Sunset Boulevard,
Oh,
where
wow.
I do a little lecture presentation. Then we watch the movie together, and then there's like a group discussion afterwards. So I enjoy doing that. I don't really want for things to do.
Mhm.
I enjoy being busy.
Now, do you have I know it all probably depends on deadlines of everything, but do you wake up one morning and say, I feel like writing dog tag, or wake up one morning and say, I feel like writing, sci-fi?
Yeah, and when you have the luxury of actually doing that, that's a great thing. That's the best way to work, is to like wake up and tell yourself, well, of the 3 or 4 things I've got going on, what's the one I'm feeling? What's the one that I've just really got something to say and I can't wait to get down to my laptop and write about it. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work that way, because you also got deadlines, and it's so a lot of times the question is like, well, what's due 3 days from now? What's the most pressing, and you write that whether you were feeling it or not. But yeah, it's great and this is one of the really wonderful things about writing several things at the same time, is that if you are stuck on one, if you're having writer's block, or you just are kind of written yourself into a corner, you don't have to keep working on it. You can put it on the back burner and move on to something else. And the other good thing this does, other than just letting you work on something that you can be more productive at, is that it gives your subconscious a chance to work on the project you're not working on. It lets your soul kind of tackle the problems that your brain was too stupid to solve. And to me, I think that's the key to good writing, is that the decisions are not just rational or problem solving. The decisions are just kind of like, I just feel that this is right, or I feel that this is the way the story should go. That this is not so much an expression of me trying to like fix a plot, as it is just an expression of what it is I have to say. And I think you come up with that gravity of what it is this piece is really about, when you're not working on it, every day trying to hit pages and make deadlines.
So, no, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, do you ever feel overwhelmed or anything like that with all that going on at once, or
Oh
is your
yeah.
process?
No, I feel overwhelmed quite a bit, and I have to sort of pace myself. And but like you said, these are good problems to have.
Yeah.
It's better to be overwhelmed than to not have enough to work on. And also, I think that when you do feel overwhelmed, or you feel like this is too big, you just sort of like focus on the things you can do. And there are times where you're just sort of snowblind. You just like, I don't feel like I can write at all today. I don't feel like I can. Where your body just revolts. It's like, I've been working too hard and I can't do anything today, and that's okay too. You make yourself take a day off, or you spend that day writing, returning emails, because the emails pile up in this business. A lot of what this job is writing emails or responding to people, or what one of my favorite parts of this art form is that when I feel just burned out, I take a day to not write any of the projects that I'm working on, but just spend a day kind of reading and then jotting down story ideas that will become pitches, that will become comics later on. And I think that kind of writing not only is something you can do when you're just sort of stressed out and burn out on all the things you're working on at that point, but it also kind of relaxes your brain to the point where you can go back to the salt mines of writing these scripts for the things you're actually getting paid for.
Now, when you were working on dog tag, did you do anything to get into that frame of mind of being in the trenches, I guess?
Yeah.
Did you listen to polka or?
No, not really. No, God, no. I did read a lot and watch some movies. I felt like one of the things I did is I watched Band of Brothers, not for inspiration, but for the opposite of inspiration. I wanted to make sure I wasn't subconsciously using any plot lines or any like stories that did I just subconsciously steal that from Band of Brothers? And thankfully, no. Like, the ideas I came up with were not surreptitiously stolen from Band of Brothers. And if there was something where I thought, well, this is a little too close, or it's a little, then I I given myself a warning and could change a little bit. But yeah, it was more just kind of like, well, thinking about like the cliches or the things I've seen before that have been done in war stories, and consciously trying to avoid that.
So, what takeaway do you hope people who read the books get?
That wars are fought by regular people on both sides, and once your country decides to send you to war, once your country decides to engage in political violence of any kind, it's like the victims will not be the people who are responsible. The victims will not be the ones who made the choice, and that's fundamentally unfair. And it's one of the reasons why we should never make these choices unless we absolutely have to. And also, the choices we do have as the people on the ground is whether or not to listen to our leaders, or whether or not to accept immoral and illegal decisions that they try to impose on us. And if we do, it will probably end in our destruction, as well as the powers that be as well. So be cognizant of the fact, even when you are a cog in a machine, that even a cog has to choose to turn.
I like that.
We both like that. All right. Well, what is the release date for Dog Tag? One more time.
May 6th. But final order cutoff is April 13th. So please let your local comic book shop know as soon as possible to add it to your pull box.
Absolutely.
Now, is it a one shot or a limited series?
It's a limited series, 6 issues.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, Chad, do you want to segue us to our next segment?
Sure. So what we've been doing lately is top fives on a topic, and I have always thought this is an interesting topic that I chose, the Mount Rushmore comic book creators. And the way I don't know about you guys, but the way I approached it, I didn't do like a personal Mount Rushmore. I kind of looked at the industry as a whole and may have drawn analogies between the presidents on Mount Rushmore. And I thought too much about this. So how we'll do this is we'll start with Marco and we'll go around, give our first one, talk about it, and then we'll keep on going.
I like your approach. I think I'm going to mimic that. So for me, I think my George Washington on the Mount Rushmore of comics would be Will Eisner.
Yes.
Which is probably the most obvious answer imaginable, but he basically created so many of the elements with not only with comic book storytelling, but the art form itself of a graphic novel. And one of my favorite graphic novels of all time is still one of the first ones ever written, which was Dropsy Avenue, which tells the story of the street that he grew up on from the days of the Dutch settlers being displaced by the English, being displaced by the Irish, being displaced by the Italians. And what's really cool about it is that it sort of shows that this sort of fear of immigrants being replaced. It's not new. It's just sort of the nature of having a good thing, that more people are going to come and want it, that more people are going to come, and it doesn't destroy what came before. It just sort of adds to the richness of the story.
Love it.
He said it better than I could.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah,
do you have any different
conversation? I was going to say Jack Kirby for my number one, because there's and it's obvious, right? There's so much of the visual language of comics that we owe to Jack Kirby, and not just superheroes, but artists in general we're still taking lessons from that guy, and he's been gone for 32 years now. So to me, I don't think it gets any bigger than Jack Kirby.
Well, he's my he's my number two, because like Jefferson, he was very integral into drafting, all the founding documents, and he was, the president, but doesn't I don't know, he doesn't seem like he was out there. I don't know. Yeah, but he did make some very important contributions to the formation of the U.S., much like Kirby had made contributions to both storytelling and art.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, so who then is your number? Your number one is Will Eisner, Chad, just for clarity's sake. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So round two.
All right. My Thomas Jefferson. Since you already gone with Jack Kirby, which I think I was definitely leaning towards him, but I think I want to go with Mobius.
Oh.
Because I think that there's like a distinct connection between Thomas Jefferson, who is this sort of new wave thinker about human liberty, and he was coming up. He was like an Enlightenment figure who changed the way people thought about government and politics. And I feel like Mobius plays that role for me, where he changed what I thought about like comics, what was possible in comics, and how comic art can really be used as sort of a mind expansion. And I just think also it's just very beautiful and elegant. So I'm going to go with Mobius.
Wow.
I wouldn't have said that. God, he wouldn't have even. I'm going to have to do some reading on Mobius now. My number two is Will Eisner, for all the reasons that we've already talked about. Again, comes down to the visual language of comics and just the form itself, and looking at the page as a whole as a work of art, right? Nobody had done that before, and that we take it for granted now, but it's just so revolutionary. And like you said, Mark, we're still cribbing from him. So, Chad, what's your number two?
It was Jack Kirby.
Oh.
For the reasons you okay? Yeah. But no, I think, as I said earlier, Kirby, has a lot of contributions to comics, and much like Jefferson had a lot of contributions to the formation of the U.S. And so.
Okay, yeah. Number three, our Lincoln.
Right. Abraham Lincoln. For my Abraham.
Is Lincoln next, or is it Roosevelt?
Well, it's Lincoln or Teddy Roosevelt, one of those two.
It's one of those.
I think it's Roosevelt.
I think you're right, actually, Chad.
Oh, you're actually going in left to right order on though. That's impressive. I was
That's thought this thing out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we're going with Teddy Roosevelt, I'm going to make my Teddy Roosevelt Daniel Clowes, just because I feel like Roosevelt was a progressive. He was different than other presidents, cut from different cloth, and I feel like, to me, like that's sort of what Daniel Clowes represents. Is like sort of, these are much more personal and less sort of like, these are more comics. These are more comics that are made for specific sensibility, i.e. my sensibility, than for something that's kind of like meant to be sold to millions of readers. And also I feel like it's more modern. It feels much more modern to the other people on my
right.
Rushmore. And I think 8-Ball might be my favorite comic series of all time. So
okay,
making my Teddy Roosevelt Dan Clowes.
I think my Teddy Roosevelt would actually be Jim Starlin, because he was kind of the first writer of his generation to look at long-form storytelling in comics in a way that really hadn't been done before. Like, if you look at his Thanos mythos from 70s Marvel, there's nothing else like it out there at the time. It was just so revolutionary and so far ahead in terms of themes, in terms of art. in terms of just sheer trippiness. I mean, and yeah, you could say Steranko to that same effect, but Steranko's fingerprint on comics is so much more limited than Starlin's, in my opinion. So that's my Teddy Roosevelt.
All right. My Teddy Roosevelt would be because Teddy Roosevelt, opened up the U.S. with the national parks and was a populist president. I love him or hate him. I would have to say Stan Lee because he was a champion of the industry. He was the face of the industry, and he probably brought more people into to comics than with his engagement of the fans. So
true, very true. And I mean, we could sit here and have a whole nother discussion about Stan Lee and his legacy and problematic aspects thereof, or whatever you want to put it as. But everything you just said is 100% on the nose, Chad.
There was also problematic stuff with Roosevelt too. So
hey.
Yeah, well, we're talking problematic. There's plenty of that juice to go around.
So,
oh, absolutely.
That's fine.
All right, number 4.
Lincoln. I'm going to say, for my Lincoln, I'm going to nominate Alan Moore.
Alan Moore.
Because Lincoln is an emancipator, and I feel like Alan Moore kind of freed comics from, the idea that this is children's literature, and he made it very dark and very literary, and also allowed for deep social commentary to exist in the pages of Big Two comics. I mean, it always was there, but it was always on a much more sort of educational or with done with younger readers in mind. He was the first person I felt who would write a Swamp Thing comic that was meant for adults, or he would write characters that we'd all read, but give them the soul of a poet. And so I felt like he really kind of liberated comics from its reputation, if nothing else, of being like children's fantasies.
Fully agree. I think you took my number 4, Mark.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to go first then.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, Alan Moore, I mean, what can we say about Alan Moore that hasn't been said 1,000 times, right? It's excuse me, he's just the guy that raised the bar on what a comic could be on a literary level, and we'll always have him for that, even though he's kind of semi-retired now and doesn't like to talk about comics. Yes, good stuff. Chad, how about you?
Well, since Lincoln is known for, the Civil War, slavery, ending slavery, my champion of comics would be Bill Gaines, because during the seduction of the innocents, he stood up to Wortham and, fought for the industry and didn't take any shit.
Absolutely. I like that.
So you can tell I really thought about that.
You really put thought into this, Chad. My hat's off to you. Okay, now it's time for our bonus round of +1.
This can be your wild card.
Yeah, wild card.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I was approaching it. So it's not like, well, this is the 5th most important person in comics or whatever, but it's a wild card. I feel like this person represents something like an aspect of comics we haven't even addressed yet, but it's so fundamentally important and influential to comics, not necessarily, as a business, but as an art form, as a vibrant art form. And I'm going to give my wild card spot to Lynda Barry.
I'm sorry, say that name again?
Lynda Barry.
Lynda Barry. Okay, I don't know who that is.
These incredibly vibrant, colorful, indie and out there sort of memoir comics.
Okay.
And I think she's been on the David Letterman show for these, but they're not like anything else. But there are a lot of people that now draw these comics. She's been doing it since the 80s. And there's a lot of people that do a lot of these comics. In fact, these are sometimes the biggest selling comics. And I think there's a direct through line between, things that are definitely more marketable and bigger selling comics like Raina Telgemeier's stuff, and Linda Berry stuff. So putting her on the Mount Rushmore as well.
Well, okay. Awesome. I learned something new tonight. I'm gonna have to check her out. I think my wild card is gonna have to be Stan Lee because, like you were saying, Chad, he's walking, talking comics propaganda, for lack of a better term, and he did more to reach out and engage audiences and engage with readers and really cultivate the idea that you were part of a club. If you were reading Marvel comics back in the day, like you were on the inside track of this thing, and that had never been done before. Comics were so impersonal, and they were just products. And the cynical view of the readership was, well, we could just recycle these comic stories in a year and a half from now, and no one will know because our readership will have aged out. Well, Stan saw past that, and he saw readers as sophisticated people and college-age kids that were looking for something new. And again, it had never been done like that before. And you just despite this, that, or the other about Stan Lee, we're not here to talk about that, but he remains one of the most important people. So he's my wild card.
All right. My wild card goes to, there's a couple people you could probably give it to, but it's to the Bill Fingers, to the Steve Ditkos of the world, who, did a lot of the, grunt work and came up with ideas, but never got the recognition until, that they deserved for, their contributions until, recently, until, it was brought to the, the attention of everybody. And there were people who fought for them to get the recognition that they deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Well, that's our top 5 for the week. Mark? Oh, go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say, like I said before we started, it's kind of hard to differentiate because I think if we're doing our personal Mount Rushmores of creators, it might be a little bit different for me, at least. But I tried to, as I said, look at the industry as a whole.
That's pretty healthy, actually. So, all right. Well, Mark Russell, Dog Tag comes out next month, and it's from Mad Cave Comic. Thank you for talking with us about it tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was great talking to you both.
Absolutely. Of course, you're welcome back anytime. And
I'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
What does your con show look like?
Oh, good question.
Con schedule.
Oh, I'm doing San Diego, and I'm doing Fan Expo Philly at the end of May, and I'm doing Heroes Con in Charlotte, South Carolina in June, and then probably New York in October.
Awesome. I'm trying my damnedest to make it to New York this year, but we'll see what happens. Chad will be there for sure.
Probably, yeah. And I'll be right at Mark's table.
Yeah, I always see Chad there. So happy to have him.
And he sees me and he starts packing up. And
all right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for an excellent show. Mark Russell, thank you for stopping by and talking with us. Where can we find you on social media these days?
I'm mostly on Blue Sky. My handle on all my social medias is the same. Thankfully, it's @Manruss, MANRUSS, and I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads.
Perfecto.
I enjoy reading your comments to the idiots on Threads.
Yeah, I think it's that each one of the social media outlets serves a different purpose for me. And that's the one I try to confine my sort of my engaging idiots. That's what Threads is for.
Fun times. All right. Chad, who are we talking to next week?
To be determined.
To be determined. We love TBD around here. All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Mark Russell, for hanging out with us tonight. And get out there, do some good in the world. Support local, whatever it may be. And don't forget to get out there and stand up for your rights, because if you don't, nobody else will. So take care and be kind to one another. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.